There's a quiet kind of power inside the British royal family, one that doesn't show itself in speeches or ceremonies. It moves through decisions made behind closed doors, through names that quietly disappear from payroll documents, through contracts that are simply not renewed. No drama, no announcement, just action. And when Prince William made his move against Queen Camilla's family, that is exactly how he did it, quietly, cleanly, and without apology. The story begins not in a palace ballroom or a heated argument, but inside a financial report. A document, rows of numbers and names that, on the surface, might seem boring to most people. But hidden inside the Duchy of Cornwall's integrated annual report, published in July 2024, was a detail that stopped royal observers in their tracks. A name was missing, a name that had appeared in every similar report for nearly 20 years. The name of Annabel Elliot, Queen Camilla's younger sister, was gone from the list of paid employees. No explanation beyond a few polite lines from palace sources. No drama, just silence where a name used to be. And that silence said everything. To understand why this mattered so much, you have to go back to 2005. That was the year King Charles, then still the Prince of Wales, married Camilla Parker Bowles in a quiet civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall. The marriage was controversial. The British public had not fully forgiven either of them for their long affair during Charles's marriage to Princess Diana. But Charles moved forward, and one of the things he did, as he settled into his life with Camilla, was bring her family closer into the royal orbit. Annabel Elliot, Camilla's younger sister and a respected interior designer, was hired as the chief designer for the estates under the Duchy of Cornwall. She was given access to some of the most beautiful and valuable properties in Britain. Her brief was to decorate, renovate, and refresh the duchy's portfolio. Luxury holiday cottages in Cornwall, properties in Wales, homes in the Isles of Scilly. She also oversaw the refurbishment of a 20-bedroom pub at Charles's Poundbury development in Dorset, and managed the conversion of cottages and a lodge for guests at Dumfries House in Scotland. Over nearly 2 decades, sources confirmed she earned several £100,000 for her services through the Duchy of Cornwall payroll. She had become, quietly but firmly, a fixture in the royal family's inner circle of trusted professionals. Then Charles became king, and when that happened, William became the Duke of Cornwall. And with that title came full control over the Duchy of Cornwall, a 700-year-old estate portfolio worth over $1 billion. That transfer of power happened in September 2022, and William did not waste time making the duchy his own. For the first year or so, Annabel continued working. Things moved slowly. But when the duchy's annual report was published in July 2024, the accounting period of 2023 to 2024 showed something that had never happened before. Annabel Elliot had received no payment. No fees, no commission, no reimbursements, just a line in the report that confirmed the balance owed to her was nil. Then quietly, sources close to William confirmed what many had already suspected. He would not be employing Annabel Elliot going forward. The decision was final. And according to those sources, it was made entirely at William's discretion. They were careful to say it was not a reflection of her work. The estates, they said, were considered complete. The current staff had learned enough from her expertise. Her services were simply no longer needed. On paper, it looked like a routine administrative decision, a modernization of the duchy's operations. But royal watchers knew better, because this was not just a contractor being let go. This was Queen Camilla's sister being quietly removed from the payroll by her own stepson. The same stepson who had spent years watching Camilla reshape his father's world, watching her family gain access and influence, and who had now, for the first time, drawn a line in the sand. The relationship between William and Camilla has always been complicated, layered in history that is difficult to fully untangle. William was a teenager when his mother died. Diana's death, and the years of pain that led up to it, left marks on both her sons that never fully healed. For a long time, William and Harry had privately referred to Camilla in ways that reflected their unease. There was a wariness, a guardedness, that never entirely went away even as the years passed, and Charles's marriage to Camilla became more settled and accepted by the public. William learned to be civil, even warm on public occasions. He understood the institution he was part of and what it required, but that did not mean he had forgotten. And it did not mean he had any intention of allowing Camilla's extended family to embed themselves permanently in the royal structure that he would one day inherit. Because that is the larger picture at play here. William is not just the Prince of Wales, he is the future king. Every decision he makes now is a preview of how he intends to run the monarchy. Every contract he does or does not renew is a statement about what kind of institution he wants to lead. And the message with Annabel Elliot was unmistakable. The Duchy of Cornwall under William would be run on his terms, not on Camilla's. The timing also carried significance that went beyond just Annabel's removal. Because at the very same time that William was quietly closing the door on Camilla's sister, a separate but deeply connected drama was unfolding around King Charles's will. Reports began to emerge in mid-2025, suggesting that Camilla was pushing Charles to revise his will in ways that would benefit not only herself but her own children. According to multiple sources, Camilla had been acting as a gatekeeper, using her position as Charles's closest confidant and constant companion to influence how his enormous portfolio of properties and assets would be divided when he died. The concern was not just about Harry, though the reports made clear that Camilla and William were both said to be urging Charles not to leave Harry a significant inheritance, viewing the Duke of Sussex as someone who could not be trusted with royal wealth. The deeper concern was the suggestion that Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, was being factored into the equation in ways that had no historical precedent. Tom Parker Bowles is not a royal. He has never been part of the working royal family. He is Camilla's son from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, a retired British Army officer. Tom has built a successful life entirely outside of royal circles, as a food critic, a writer, and the author of 9 cookbooks. He has made it very clear, publicly and with considerable humor, that he has no interest in royal titles and would not want one even if it were offered. He once said on a podcast that if he were suddenly made a prince, Buckingham Palace gates would be stormed. He understood the absurdity of it. He was, by all accounts, a private man who happened to have an unusual stepfather. But that did not stop the reports from suggesting that Camilla was pushing for him to receive a meaningful share of Charles's estate. A share that would represent a significant transfer of wealth to someone entirely outside the Windsor bloodline. Royal observers pointed to this as a sign of just how much influence Camilla had accumulated over Charles during his years of declining health. While Charles fought cancer with characteristic quiet dignity, while William and Kate managed their own separate health crisis with Kate's own illness, Camilla had been there, steady, present, indispensable. And in that space, according to those sources, she had worked to secure not just her own position but her family's financial future. William's response to all of this, including what was happening around the will, was characteristically controlled. He does not make public statements about internal family matters if he can avoid it. He does not call press conferences to announce his frustrations, but he acts. And the removal of Annabel Elliot from the duchy payroll was, for many people who study the royal family closely, a statement that needed no words. It said, "This estate is mine now, and I will decide who benefits from it." What made this even more striking was the contrast with how Charles had behaved in similar situations. Charles, throughout his reign, had shown a tendency toward inclusion, sometimes almost stubbornly so. He had invited his disgraced brother Andrew back to Sandringham for Christmas in 2023, allowing him to take part in the traditional church walk that the public watches every year. William had been deeply opposed to this. Sources close to the family confirmed that he challenged Charles directly over Andrew's inclusion and was, according to one account, firmly put in his place by his father. Charles believed in family harmony, in keeping doors open even when common sense might argue for closing them. William did not share this instinct. He was more willing to make hard calls, to accept the discomfort of exclusion if he believed it was the right thing for the institution he was protecting. That difference between father and son, between Charles the reconciler and William the pragmatist, runs through almost every difficult royal story of recent years. It runs through the Harry and Meghan situation, where William is widely reported to be far more resistant to any reconciliation than Charles. It runs through the Andrew situation. And it runs through the question of Camilla's family and what role they should play in the royal world going forward. From William's perspective, the logic is clear. The Duchy of Cornwall is not Camilla's estate to manage by proxy through her sister. It is the heir's estate, a centuries-old institution that exists to support the Prince of Wales and, eventually, the King. When Charles was the Duke, he made choices that reflected his life at that time, including bringing Camilla's family into the fold as a gesture of trust and love toward his new wife. William has no obligation to maintain those choices, and he did not. He made new ones. The people around William have been careful not to frame any of this as a conflict with Camilla personally. The palace sources who spoke about Annabel's removal went out of their way to say it was not a reflection on her work, that there was no bad blood between William and Annabel, that the work had simply been completed. That framing was deliberate. William is not interested in being seen as hostile to his stepmother. He is interested in something more long-term and more strategic, establishing his own authority over the institutions he controls, and making sure that when the time comes for him to take the throne, there is no ambiguity about where power rests. And that is perhaps the most important thing to understand about what has unfolded. This is not simply a family argument playing out in the pages of royal reports. This is a future king making decisions about what his monarchy will look like. The question of who is on the duchy payroll, who has access to royal trust decisions, who receives invitations to the inner circles of royal life. These are not small things. They are the building blocks of institutional power. And William has served notice, in his quiet and deliberate way, that he will be the one building that institution on his terms. There is something poignant in all of this, too, when you sit with it long enough. Camilla worked hard to be accepted by the British public. She endured years of being cast as a villain in the story of Diana and Charles, and she outlasted all of it with patience and a kind of steely composure that eventually won people over. She became queen. She stood beside Charles through cancer and health scares and the relentless pressure of the crown. She is, by most accounts, a woman who loves her husband and has done everything asked of her by the institution. But she is also a stepmother to William. And no matter how many years pass, no matter how many state banquets they attend together, that word stepmother carries its own quiet weight. William's mother was Diana, and the Duchy of Cornwall, the estates and properties and trust decisions that shape the monarchy's future, those will be his and Kate's, his and George's. The line is drawn not with anger but with certainty. Annabel Elliott, for her part, still runs her own interior design company, Annabel Elliott Limited, based in Dorset. She continues her work independently. Her departure from the duchy was not the end of her career, but it was the end of something else, a quiet arrangement that had persisted for 20 years, built in one chapter of royal history and quietly closed when that chapter ended and a new one began. The British monarchy has always moved this way, slowly, carefully, without public drama where it can be avoided. The changes that matter most are rarely announced. They appear in financial reports, in names that are present and names that are absent, in contracts renewed and contracts quietly allowed to expire. And in the story of Annabel Elliott's name disappearing from a document, in the reports of Camilla's influence over a will, in the broader picture of William drawing his own lines around the institutions he will one day lead, you can see the next chapter of the British monarchy already being written. One quiet decision at a time.